Hi there, nathINSANE back with another build video, and in today's video we are going to go over the most satisfying builds, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of people go over the trip mine build for Hunter, but this is easily one of my favorite gameplay loops, and I'm putting my own twist on it with war mine cells. I don't watch every other video, I don't watch every other YouTuber, so I'm sure somebody's already done this build, but hey, I can at least put mine out there, and if you haven't seen it already, then this is a perfect opportunity to make this build yourself. And I've actually used this in the master dungeon, and it worked pretty well. I will say, just be careful with all the explosions, because you can and more than likely will trigger the bells, and it will teleport you by accident. I've done it a couple times, and it causes to wipe. My bad. And like every other build video, I'm going to leave it on the screen for the entirety, so you don't have to skip around a bunch, but I will be going over the entire build and the gameplay loop on how to effectively run this build. Alright, to start off with, we'll go over the aspects. So to start off with, we are going to be running Gunpowder Gamble. This gives us our big giant explosive grenade, our big giant bundle of trip mines that we throw at our enemies and stick to them just like our normal trip mines. And we're going to be running Knock 'em Down, so that way our Blade Barrage has more projectiles and gets more damage. And we're also going to be Radiant when we use our throwing knives. We're going to get kills, we'll be Radiant from that, and then when we use our powered melees from one of the fragments we're running, we will continue being Radiant. So it's going to all tie together. There's a ton of synergy in this build. Now you'll definitely have to run trip mines for this build to work effectively and properly, because we're going to be using young Ahamkara's spines. Now technically you can use whatever throwing knife you want, but I recommend knife trick just because it's a bit easier to hit one of the 3 knives that you do end up throwing. And you can hit multiple targets at once, so it just kind of works better for me personally. And for the super, I like Blade Barrage a ton. It's got a huge buff this season, and it's just a lot quicker to get off, and you can just constantly be spamming it, and you don't have to worry about hitting your shots. You just do it, and then it causes explosion, and it also works with our Warmine build, because with the mod that we are running, the explosions proc Warmine cells to spawn in. Now for the fragments, we're going to be using Ember of Singeing, so that way our class ability is recharging faster. That way we can continue the loop of throwing knives that respawn our class ability, and then that respawns our grenades. It's just a big giant loop. Now me personally, I'm using Ember of Solace, so that way I'm getting the max duration of Radiant and Restoration, but you can use Ember of Empyrean. I just also like having that extra 10 damage resilience since my armor is not spec'd out properly. You'll be spamming so many abilities that it's actually really hard to run out of Radiant and Restoration, because this gameplay loop feeds into our class ability regen, and it all has a really nice synergy to it. And then for the final fragment, I'm using Ember of Torches. When we use our powered melee attacks, we make everybody and ourselves Radiant. This will synergize with our aspect of Knock 'em Down and some of our armor mods, so that way we are regenning our class ability even faster. And this also causes Scorch. That's why I recommend running Knife Trick, because it's a lot easier to hit your targets. You can apply Scorch, you can defeat them and get your class ability back faster, which ties into why we are running Gambler's Dodge, so that way when we dodge near enemies, we get our melee back instantaneously, and we can spam throw our knives again and continue getting Radiant. Now to start off with our armor mods, we're going to go over the exotic that we'll be running, Young Ahamkara's Spine. Now make sure your Young Ahamkara's Spines are void. That way you are able to regen your class ability much faster, because the other affinities don't have the same abilities that Void does. Void is pretty much specifically geared towards getting your class ability back faster. And that's why we'll be running Focusing Strike and Bolstering Detonation, because we'll be throwing our trip mine grenades a ton, and we'll be using our Knife Trick all the time. This will speed up our class ability regen and allow us to continue our gameplay loop pretty seamlessly. The cherry on top with all of it is Font of Might, so that way when we do decide to use our heavy ammo or whatever weapon we are using, we will get that bonus damage for weapons that match our element type. Now for our helmet, I'm running Ashes to Assets ×2, so that way we get our super regen even faster, because we're going to get a ton of trip mine kills and a ton of our big bundle trip mine kills. And then on top of that, we're using Explosive Wellmaker, since all our trip mines and every ability we're using is pretty much causing explosions, and it'll spawn elemental wells. Not only do all our explosions spawn elemental wells, we will also be spawning Warmine cells. Thanks to our Wrath of Rasputin mod we'll be running on our legs. When we get Solar Splash damage, Final Blows, it has a chance of creating Warmine cells, and since pretty much this whole build revolves around exploding things, we will get a bunch of Warmine cells to spawn. Now this is where you can let your imagination and customization come in, because on the chest piece, I have it so that way when I want to change the affinity of it, it's only one upgrade module and it costs 10,000 glimmer, and I can switch my Warmine cell that I am spawning to whatever type I want. whatever I wanted to do in a certain situation. So for example, right now I have Fire Team Medic, but if I were to switch it to Void, I could chain and do suppressing Warmind cells, or if I did it to Arc, I can do chain lightning cells when I destroy them. It's really up to you, and it's a little bit different and lets you kind of customize how you want to play. If you want to be support, or if you want to just do DPS, you can throw something on like burning cells. I recommend this spot being your chest piece where you change the affinity, because a lot of the mods on the chest piece don't really pertain to this gameplay loop. It doesn't really create more synergy. It's really tied to weapon reserves and unflinching mods and damage resistance and stuff like that. So that way you aren't really affecting your gameplay loop and messing with the synergy of the build. And then for the class item, I am running Solar Fulmination, Classy Restoration, and Well of Ordnance. That way when I do pick up an elemental well, I get a little bit of my grenade energy back. And I also want to revisit this build later on once the seasonal artifact mods are gone, because I actually really like this build a lot. It's a lot of fun. There's tons of synergy, creates a really fun gameplay loop. I know it's a lot about abilities, but you can use your weapons too and make this build even more effective. So something with like incandescent and stuff creates more synergy with this build, more explosions, and more Warmind cells and wells. So just to reiterate, the gameplay loop for this is you're going to be using your grenade and your melee first and foremost. And then after you've used your melee, you use your class ability, so that way you respawn your melee energy. It's just going to be tying all together. You'll see, it's just so easy. Even if you mess it up, it's not that big of a deal. You'll figure it out. As long as you're hitting things with your melees and your grenades, you'll be fine. It'll spawn a bunch of energy. But that's going to do it for me, guys. If you guys enjoyed this video and or liked it, feel free to thumbs it up or subscribe if you feel like it. Comment if I missed anything. If you have any other ideas, if you have any improvements on this build, please feel free to let me know, because I love sharing info and I love build crafting. I think there's so many different ways to build craft, and there's not one right way. It's just a lot of fun, and there's so many different builds out there right now. I'm working at least 3 in my head currently, but I will leave those for another video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. So long and good night.
There. A true nightmare born of so much pain and suffering. End it.